Welcome back, baseball fans. We've got first round draft results in. The first round is done for the Summer League draft, the 1969, 70, 71, 72 Carryover League. We'll just scroll up team by team and show you who they pick, and we'll also show you the strat card as well. Okay, I guess I should flash up the draft order first, though you're not going to remember it. It's not a big deal. But anyway, the Angels pick first, Las Vegas, San Diego, Milwaukee, yada, 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 until the final four teams from the League Championship Series: Oakland, San Francisco, Cincinnati, and Baltimore. Last year, you may recall, Cincinnati and Baltimore, in the year 2020, played in the World Series, which was a 50th anniversary of the 1970 World Series, which is a nice coincidence, though it doesn't ink it specifically in 1970, since we were playing with 1969 cards and some 1984 cards. All right, enough already. Let's look at the draft results, folks. Here we go with the first overall pick in the draft. The California Angels select Nolan Ryan, of course, his 72 card with the Anglers, and it's really serendipitous. The whole way he ends up on California is completely different, but it's a lot more fun and interesting. The Mets are off the hook. They weren't responsible for this deal. We had Ryan in the Carryover League, playing for the Angels in the mid to late 70s, going to the Houston Astros, which we knew he did, and then we pushed him to the Texas Rangers for his 1984 card, for the 1984 season, knowing that he would finish his career with Texas, even though he didn't play for the Rangers to the late 80s. But we thought it'd be cool for him to play for Texas for at least a year. We didn't want to give Texas all the credit for making this deal, though, so in a proxy, Ryan went from the Rangers to the Dodgers to the Angels, and the Angels and Dodgers swapped their top two starters, Messersmith, Tommy John, for Bill Singer, Nolan Ryan. Very wild, cool, interesting trade. It's changing history, but it still works as far as following a chronology of players. Nolan Ryan, first pick in the draft. With the second pick in the draft, it's the expansion Las Vegas team, and they elect to improve Woody Fryman. And this is a pretty clever move. When you're as bad as these expansion teams are, you probably don't have good prospects. But if there's an opportunity from one of your existing players to get a heck of a lot better, take advantage of it, and Fryman does exactly that. His ERA in this particular card is 2.05. So it's not a great move by Las Vegas, but it's a smart move, and they need all the help they can get. Third pick, Padres. This guy was sitting there, and what was interesting about Dave Roberts is that he's linked to the Padres, but also to the Houston Astros, and the Padres obviously picked before the Astros, and they pounced on his 1971 year with a sparkling 2.10 ERA, even though he lost 17 games for a lousy San Diego team. Next up, we've got the Milwaukee Brewers, and they finally land Marty Patton. And we had a bunch of different teams who could have taken Patton in this era. The Brewers, who had him for a couple years, the Boston Red Sox, who had him for a year, and of course the Kansas City Royals, who would play the bulk of his career for. Milwaukee takes this card, puts him in the rotation, and now the Brewers have a lot of starting pitchers, and they're going to have to make some moves. Maybe they trade one of their starters to improve their team elsewhere. So you've seen pitching, pitching, and more pitching. With the fifth pick in the draft, we have another improvement, and that is the St. Louis Cardinals going with Joe Torre. And why not? It's his big year, the 71 year of Joe Torre, hitting .363. Did they even have steroids back then? I don't know. That's a joke, folks. Don't take it too seriously. But he hits 363 somehow in 71. And would never come close to that ever again. But there you go. Joe Torre's 71 year is selected by the Cardinals. They had his 69 year, they bumped it up. A lot of teams will bump up their Hall of Famers into a different year so that they can protect other players at the end of this season when the 69 players go off the board. All right, next up we got Florida. And here's the first. It's not really a surprise, folks, but they take this guy, Mike Kilkenny. You know, the expansion teams, they don't have they don't have a history in this area. They didn't exist. So they have to hope they can catch lightning in the bottle in any single year. And Kilkenny is a left-handed starter. He's got a decent card. I like the homer fly ball on 9, the double fly ball, and the single line out. So, yeah, he's not great by any stretch, but he's good. And you also notice that Jose Pagan is their 8th round draft choice. I do this when just to save me time later in the draft. They had the rights to Jose Pagan, or put it this way, he was in the Florida card stack for the remainder of Pagan's career. So Florida decided that instead of offering him away for a token, they would just sign him in the 8th round. So it's announced now, instead of me having to make the copy and paste transaction later in the draft. Next up are the Expos. And the Expos take Mike Marshall, rubber arm reliever. He can come in every other day, pitch 116 innings here. Would pitch 200 innings for the Dodgers one year. Another great pitcher, and pitching has been the story in the draft thus far. Moving on, the next team is your Toronto Blue Jays. And they have the 9th pick in the draft. And they take Doyle Alexander. This is interesting because he was part of that 84 card set I spoke about earlier in the video. Where the 80s players met the 70s players. Doyle Alexander pitched for the Blue Jays in that period. And interestingly enough, he's got a 72 card with the Baltimore Orioles, where he's very good, a 2.46 ERA. So Doyle Alexander is going to play a huge chunk of his career with an expansion Toronto team. Next up, Arizona. And with the 12th pick of the draft. And this is kind of a surprise, but not really if you look at it closely. Jim Willoughby. Small sample size, rookie year, 11 starts, probably brought up late in the year, I'm guessing. Really shines against lefties, as you can tell. Starter 8, good kind of player for, again, a lightning in the bottle like we saw with Mike Kilkenny. A guy you probably haven't heard of. You hope that this small sample size extended over 4 years will help Arizona. With 13th pick, it's the Chicago White Sox, and I had my choice of Wilbur Wood which year. We took Wilbur Wood. Now, this Wilbur Wood card has an ERA of 1.91 in 1971. And it's better than the 1972 Wilbur Wood card. However, in the rules for Strat, for 1972, it says you can pitch Wilbur Wood on 2 days rest. Well, I don't want to pitch Wilbur Wood on 2 days rest. I don't want his arm to fall off. So I declined that card and that logic. I'll try that obviously for 1 year. When the 71 card expires for that 1 year, we'll try Wilbur Wood on 2 days rest just to kind of see what happens. But I didn't really want to do it. And frankly, the 71 card, the whip is, the ERA is almost a half a run better. So, next up, Seattle. This is not going to be a glamorous pick, but they take, with a 14th pick, John Ellis from 72, which means this is 4 years. For catcher with plenty of power both ways. No defense whatsoever. Dude hits 294. So if you're an expansion team with no history whatsoever, to have a solid hitting catcher for 4 years, you take it. Particularly in this era, kind of a dead ball era where the hitting's kind of bad and the pitching's great. So they're going to suffer with a bad throwing catcher, but there you go. All right, next up, I think this is 16, 15, 14. This is 12, I want to say. Let me see what number this is. I lost track of the numbers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Oh, Seattle was 11. I'm sorry. Portland is 12. They have the 12th pick in the draft, does Portland. And they improved Ray Sadecki. This move isn't going to move the needle very much. But they have a nice quality rotation because they traded for Jim Perry, 24-game winner. And they have Ray Culp and Nellie Briles all in the rotation. So they have a really good starting rotation in Portland. And hopefully that makes up for no bullpen whatsoever and weak hitting. Next up, the Yankees. Now the Yankees, this isn't a blockbuster move either, but they take Danny Cater, steady hitting first baseman. It's 301 with this card. And one of the big reasons why they took this Danny Cater card is that eventually they will trade Danny Cater to the Boston Red Sox for Sparky Lyle. A trade the Red Sox may regret. And it could be a proxy. We could get Lyle to the Yankees, Cater someplace else, and maybe the Red Sox can get a better return on the investment than Danny Cater. Moving on to the 14th pick. This is the Philadelphia Phillies. No surprise here. Here it is, folks. The 72 Steve Carlton card. And, yeah. Interestingly, we've seen a lot of pitching thus far in the draft, so now when you see the Carlton card, you're thinking, it's great, but we already saw a really good Woody Fryman card. We saw a good Jim Willoughby card. I mean, we've seen a lot of other really good cards on short sample size. We saw Wilbur Wood's card. Wood's card may even be better than Carlton's card, but anyway, Carlton won. That's the 27 win card there. Boston Red Sox, 15th pick in the draft, and they took the Rookie of the Year at catcher. Carlton Fisk launches his career with the Red Sox here. Interesting little story. His 71 card was also available, but they spelt his name wrong. They put an E between the L and the T, and I just did not like looking at that, so I decided I didn't want to draft that card, and this card's better anyway. But I thought that was an eyesore, so I ignored the 71 Carlton Fisk card. But that's one of the errors that you look for in Strat. It's pretty cool when you can pick those things up. All right, we're getting halfway through round one. It's the New York Mets, and they got to buy themselves into winning the 1969, 70, 71, 72 World Series, because of course that's the last time those 69 Mets, the amazing Mets cards, will be in this summer league. So who do they take? The New York Mets will select 72 John Matlack. Are you kidding me? Of course. I mean, Seaver, Kuzman, welcome, Mr. Matlack. And now you've pretty much got the top three pitchers in all of baseball. Seaver and Kuzman approve, as does Tug McGraw in the bullpen. Now you arguably have the three best left-handed pitchers on any pitching staff in baseball, plus some guy named Tom Seaver. I'm thinking if the Mets can hit 250, they can win the division. And then from there, who knows? It's how far the hitting takes the Mets. All right, 17th pick. The Pirates decided to improve instead of going after guys. And they improved this dude, Willie freaking Stargell. This is a guy that'll break into your home and destroy all your furniture and you know, just a destroyer, a wrecking ball of destruction. Yes, did you see 2-8, homer 1-19 double? You just don't want to face this guy. He's just ridiculous. I mean, it's like you don't even want to schedule the Pirates if you have to face Stargell. It's ridiculous. So a gaudy 1.026 OPS. No surprise. Instead of adding a player, they simply decided to improve one of their own. All right, next up we got Cleveland with the 18th pick in the draft. Ooh, another stud. They traded in the offseason Sam McDowell for Gaylord Perry, and then after making the trade, they then bumped up Perry to his 72 card. And what is it about 192 ERAs? Because in 1972 and 71, we've got Wilbur Wood, Gaylord Perry, and Steve Carlton with ERAs below 2 in over 300 innings. Whew. So Gaylord Perry becomes their first-round pick. And they also had the rights to Buddy Bell, so they exercised that also in 1972 for their 5th-round pick. Buddy Bell they got from Texas, who had finished his 1980s run with the Rangers, and the Rangers would ultimately get a third baseman. You'll see that later in this draft. All right, next up, one of my favorite players of all time in Strat. I'm a huge fan of Cesar Cedeno. Just love this guy. It's really surprising what the few number of All-Star games he was in. I think he was just in one All-Star game. But I love Cedeno. Double-A stealer, 1-3, hits .320. You'll find one of the maxims of the 4-year Carryover League is that every player is good at least once every 4 years. And in the case of Cedeno, it's true for 16 years. You can take him from 1970 to 1984 in the Carryover League, and he can be a lifetime Astro if you carry his cards over. So Cedeno, no surprise here, he gets improved. His 70 rookie card was okay. He was a 3 in center field. He immediately goes up to being a 1 in center field. All right, next up, and this is the last team, Team 20, the last team that didn't make the playoffs, the Ohio players. This team used a token, cashed in a draft token, for Johnny Jeter. Let's take a look at Jeter's card. Yeah, you like doubles? Another one of these fringe player cards with 75 at-bats that Ohio's going to push this card for 3 years. The reason they used the token is that they had the rights to Johnny Jeter in 1972, but he wasn't as good as 1971. The team that had him in 1971 is the Padres. So to get that card away from the Padres, they offered up a draft token. So in the token department, we have so far that San Diego is +1 and Ohio is -1, which means that San Diego presently would have the first pick after the draft for the free agents, the guys that are still on the street. So Johnny Jeter, nice card, goes to the Ohio players. Next up, the Darlings. This team has become one of my favorite baseball teams, and that is the Kansas City Royals, and you'll see a lot of information here. Okay, so the Kansas City Royals just have a bevy of talent strewn through their farm system in pretty much every year between 69 and 72. You see, they are the winner of the Commissioner Award for roster utilization from last year. It's like a compensatory pick like the NFL gives to teams. And so it's a single draft pick, and Kansas City is the winner of the single Commissioner Award draft pick. That would be the 33rd overall pick. A pick awarded at the end of the first round before the second round. That's just simply an extra player they get. They add this dude, Roger Nelson, They already had enough starting pitching, but I added this dude anyway because he's ridiculous. He's got a .87 whip, and he's a starter 9. And they already have Bunker, Heedland, Rooker, Bob Johnson. They got plenty of starting pitchers, so they can trade a starter. And I also wrote notes because I already know who I want to pick in these other rounds. Mayberry's 72 card, Cookie Rojas's 71, and Paul Shaw's 71 card. Already in the Kansas City farm system. They don't need to look at elsewhere. They got it going on. And I'm telling you, if you don't have to play in the American League West against the Oakland A's and that dynasty from 72 to 74, Kansas City might win a World Series while George Brett is in AAA. Imagine that. They don't even need George Brett. They might win a World Series in the next 3 years. So yeah, Kansas City is in the American League Midwest. The Oakland A's are in the American League West. Kansas City and the Twins are the top 2 teams in that division. Moving on. I believe we were at pick number 22 here. The Cubs took a couple pitchers to join Fergie Jenkins, and they would be Bert Hooton and Milt Pappas. This would be Pappas' best year, 17-7 and 72. I believe he had a near no-hitter, and somebody tried to bunt on him, and then he got really... There's a story about that somewhere. Somebody tried to break up his no-no by bunting, and he got really flustered or something like that. I can't remember the story. Any Cubs fans out there might want to chime in the comments section. But anyway, Pappas and Hooton, 2 stud pitchers to add to Fergie Jenkins. So you can't use the excuse that the Cubs can't pitch in the daylight at Wrigley. Not with those dudes. All right, Atlanta. Oh my goodness. An embarrassment of riches in 1 year, 71. It's kind of tragic. It's not tragic for this pick though. Hank Aaron improving his card to get him over 1,000 OPS, and oh my goodness, it just we're going to destroy teams with this card. He actually was a 1 with this 1969 card that I made his defense worse. His defense goes from being a 1 to a 2 just because of the ridiculous destruction he does, and he can play first base. Now, why it is unfortunate for the Braves is that they can only add 2 players from 1971. Aaron is one of them, and they have to decide between an Earl Williams card who hits 33 home runs and a Ralph Garr card that hits 340. So imagine having those 3 guys on the 71 Braves together, and you can only pick 2 of the 3. That's the dilemma Atlanta has. All right, after that embarrassment of riches, then we look at the next team who, well, the pick is in for the Texas Rangers. We saw this guy in the Winter Baseball Classic. It's Ken McMullen, a nice player who hit 272 with 19 home runs. He becomes the heir apparent to Buddy Bell to play third base. But unfortunately for the Washington Senators / Texas Rangers, they got nothing going on in the farm system for the next 3 years. And unfortunately, well, depending on how you look at it, they overachieved in the Summer League last year, which is why they had the 24th pick in the draft. And now they're going to probably suffer this year and in future years as a team on the decline. All right, next up, with the 25th pick, it's the Dodgers. And the Dodgers get a twofer. In 1972, the young guys have bloomed finally. Bill Buckner and Bill Russell will join the Dodgers. You see Buckner here has got the stick going, hitting 319 with his card. Russell is good enough. He gets his batting average to 272. And they earmarked Don Sutton to take in a later round with his 69 card. And the reason they want to do that is Don Sutton has an outstanding 1972 card, but you've already used those slots for Buckner and Russell. All right, 26th pick in the draft. It's the Minnesota Twins, a team that they just can't get a break. They go from being in the Dynasty division with the Oakland A's to now being in the same division as the Kansas City Royals. This is a team that was really good in the late 1960s. They are the first winners of the American League West in 1969 and 1970, a year where the Oakland A's possibly may have had a better roster, even though they didn't win anything. It was the Twins who won in 69 and 70. So what the Twins do, they double up with pitching from the 72 set, and they get Jim Cott improved. It's so good to see a Jim Cott card that doesn't put guys on base. He normally has a high whip by giving up a ton of singles. This Cott is an exception. He's 10-2 with a 2.07 ERA. And Blyleven. They made a big off-season trade you may have seen with Portland to get Blyleven, and they immediately cash him in for a 4-year contract. And they'll probably renew him again in 76 and get an 8-year run out of Burt Blyleven, Minnesota, until he begins his odyssey throughout baseball. But right now, the Twins, get 2 pitchers with ERAs below 3, and in their bullpen, they're loaded with Pete Reichert, Stan Williams, and Ron Peronowski. So the Twins, they're going to be, right there in this thing, battling the Royals for that division. Worst case scenario, the best wild card team in all of baseball. Okay, next up, the boys of last summer, the Colorado Rockies, a team that likes to party like it's 1971. And the Colorado Rockies select Dave Kingman. Of course they select Dave Kingman. Why? Because they like to go homer, walk, strikeout. And Dave Kingman does a whole lot of homer, walk, strikeout. His 71 card, his batting average actually goes down for the next 5 or 6 years. So 71, I think, is his rookie year, and that was his best year in 115 plate appearances. All right, next up, the Tigers. The Detroit Tigers select, they could have improved Northrup, Cash, Horton, McLean, Lolich, but this Gates Brown card is absolutely ridiculous, and they just decided to take it. This is too much fun, folks. This is too much fun. This is a ridiculous card that it's 338. I think this is the first one-way player in the draft. He gives you nothing. He gives you no defense. He gives you nothing against lefties. He's just hideous to look at against righties. I've never seen the 1-2 card, which is normally the 8th best hitter on the team. That's not the case here because he hits 338 with it. 11 homers and 195 at bats, and he just destroys. It's ridiculous. So congratulations, Detroit. You have the most hideous hitter in all of baseball, Gates Brown. All right, we're at the final 4 teams from the League Championship Series, and you're going to see some moves that teams made to improve internally to keep their long-term success going. Starting with the Oakland A's picking at 29. And the Oakland A's decided to improve Catfish Hunter. And oh my goodness, take a look at Catfish here. His 72 card, 21-7 and a 2.04 ERA. You combine this with a Vita Blues 71 card, 24-8, 182. Blue Hunter, and now the A's are saying, New York Mets, who? You got Seaver, Kuzman, Matlack on the Mets. You got Blue Hunter and somebody else on Oakland. Might be the 2 best starting staffs. Hunter and Blue will protect that Oakland dynasty through 74, 75. And a special note that when it's time to take Raleigh Fingers, they have their choice of 71 or 72. He's not significantly better in either of those years. The surprise team in the Final Four last year was the San Francisco Giants. This move might seem curious, but I'll explain it, and that is they take Chris Spire, probably the only shortstop taken in the first round. And the reason why this is such a cool pick is that Spire's numbers in a full season, he had 15 homers with a .269 batting average, as a 2 at shortstop, but he immediately goes into the conversation of your starting shortstop for the All-Star game, because shortstop was a very weak position in this era, and the Giants might suddenly have the best shortstop in all of baseball, Chris Spire. I mean, statistically his numbers aren't good, but the position is really bad in the National League. So having a strength at a weak position where you still have, McCovey and Mays and Bobby Bonds and so forth, that could bode well for the Giants. All right, next up, runners-up to the World Series last year, the Big Red Machine, the Cincinnati Reds. They want to protect their investments. They went internal here. They already had Tony Perez, but they decided to bump his 69 card up to his 70 card. Just 1 year bump. But when you do it, you get a .317 batting average, a .990 OPS. He still can't play third base at all. But you could put him at first if you're willing to trade Lee May and find a third baseman. They also added Dave Concepcion, same year, 70. Concepcion, rookie year of 70, he hits .260, but then after that, in 71 and 72, his batting average is near the Mendoza line. So ironically, his rookie year is good, then he suffers 2 lousy years. And lastly, the Baltimore Orioles. Again, they want to protect their investments. They want to make sure that the guys they keep from 1969 will all be kept. And so with their pick and the final pick of the first round, the Baltimore Orioles improved Dave McNally. Now, this is not much of an improvement. His ERA and his WHIP improve slightly, but the point was to get him into his 1971 card, and by doing that, the Orioles can now protect the 4 guys they want for next year's draft, which is going to be Dave Johnson, Frank Robinson, Paul Blair, and Mike Cuellar. So this was about protecting their future, and they decided to make a move right now with McNally. That concludes the first round of the draft, and I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.